Hey, John, I was really enjoying your recent podcast with Stone Cold Steve Austin, when you told some really entertaining stories about the early stages of your career. And you told some recent stories today about the Midnight Express. And I was wondering if you had any fun stories you could share about your time on the road during your career.
Oh God, rib stories and road stories, they're endless. But my favorite one with the Midnight Express was we titled it "Lots of Ants" because we had been at an outdoor ballpark in the Carolinas in the summertime with a spot show, and we had dressed in the dugout. And then we were leaving, and I was driving. Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane were riding the car with me, and we stopped at the convenience store and got snacks and drinks and etc. And we're on the way back home, and Stan started, we're in the middle of nowhere in North Carolina on a two-lane highway, and it's pitch black. It's midnight, and Stan said, he slapped his leg. He said, something bit me. He said, boy, that's what I hate about the summertime is bugs. I said, yeah, because he knows I'm real bug phobic, right? I said, yeah, I know how you mean. And then we go a little farther, and he slaps his leg again, and he's turned the light on. And as I turned the dome light on, there is a big black ant on his white tube sock. And he slapped it, and he said, I knew I felt something. He said, we dressed in that dugout. I saw an anthill in that dugout. I said, where were you dressing? He said, I was dressing so-and-so. I said, I was right next to you. Now, of course, I'm going to start feeling. And he slaps his leg again, and now I'm starting to get itchy. I turn the light on. Now there's an ant in my lap. And I'm like, oh, Jesus Christ. And I slap it out of the way. And I said, you don't suppose they got in our clothes or our bags or whatever? Well, then all of a sudden we turn the light on again, and there's two or three more ants laying on the seat by me, and there's one on my lap, and Stan's got one. I'm like, oh, shit. I pull the car over to the side of the road because now I just know that we're infested with ants. And as I pull the car over the side of the road, I start to get out. An ant lands on my neck, and I'm, oh my God. I get out of the car. I stand in front of the headlights and pull my pants down around my ankles. And I've pulled my shirt off, and I'm slapping at my legs and hopping up and down, and Stan's over on the side of the car, slapping his legs and hopping up and down, but not getting undressed. And Bobby, of course, gets out of the back seat with a beer in each hand and is standing there. And here come headlights. And now I look like I'm on stage in front of a spotlight, almost naked, hopping up and down like an idiot in front of the car on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, and it's the cops. Whew, red light, it pulls over. And I'm like, oh, thank God, because they'll take us up a car that's infested with ants. And just then, as the guy gets out and looks at us, and he has to think, what the fuck is going on here? I said, oh, I'm so glad you're here. And Stan said, ribs over. And I'm like, wait a minute, ribs up, what? He had gotten at the convenience store a plastic bag, like for 99 cents. It said lots of ants, and they're realistic looking fake ants. So now this cop has come upon a guy dancing naked on the side of the road, another guy that's slapping his arms and legs, and another guy that's holding two beers in each hand. And Stan just walked up to the cop and put his arm around him, said, see, officer, just having a little fun with these lots of ants, and walked the cop back to his car, opened the door, pushed the cop in the car in a nice way, and said, drive safe, officer, have a wonderful evening. And we got the right.
What year was that, you think?
That was 1988, 9, thereabouts.
It's a different time, my friend. It's a different time. Everybody on the ground. Hands back out of your hand.
Don't taste me, bro.
Mike Chiari, please.
Well, since we're on the topic of stories, your issues with Vince Russo are very well documented, and I was wondering to kind of give the listeners a feeling of the dynamic between the two of you. If you could provide an example or an anecdote of some time when the two of you had a fundamental difference of opinion, maybe behind the scenes.
Were we breathing? If we were breathing, we had a fundamental difference behind the scenes. And, actually on my one-man show, I have prefaced it now by saying that I know everybody loves to hear me rant about Vince Russo, but unless somebody asks me a question that I can relate a new untold story that makes Vince Russo look like a complete idiot, I'm going to stay away from him. But I'll tell you one real quick. We had a fundamental difference about everything, including, I was always in favor of him not breathing, and he was always in favor of keeping breathing. But one night we're at Raw, and they've changed. There's 8 matches on Raw, and 6 of them end in a disqualification. And of course, then China had a match, and that's when she was with Triple H, and she didn't like her finish, so they went to Russo, and they changed it to a DQ also. So there's 7 out of 8 matches as disqualification. So I went up to Russo in the hallway, and I said, Vince, I said, we got 8 matches on the show tonight, and 7 of them are disqualifications. And talking like this, not making a big deal out of it. And he looked at me like I had turds hanging out of my mouth. He said, DQ, schmeq, nobody cares. Where now everybody turns their head, and he starts to walk off from me like I'm some schlub running the Ferris wheel at the county fair. And, as Bill Watts used to say, if he was ever in a fucking men's locker room, he'd be whistling Stranger in Paradise. So as he says DQ, schmeq, and walks off, nobody cares, and walks off from me, as loud as he had said that, I said, you're going to be the one to care in 3 years when you're back running a video store, you motherfucker. And son of a gun, I was only off by, I believe, a year, because then he was back running a video store. So he goes to Vince McMahon and says, oh, Cornette's yelling at me in front of the boys. And Vince McMahon goes to Jim Ross, says, Cornette's yelling at Russo in front of the boys. Jim Ross comes to me and finds out why I'm yelling at Vince Russo in front of the boys. When he found that out, he went back and told Vince, well, here's why, and he should have. And so it was never ending. And people say, well, Russo doesn't knock you publicly. Of course not, because he's a backstabbing, dishonest prick. He only knocks me privately. And, to people that don't know, the one talent Russo has is somehow making people believe that he knows what the fuck he's doing in the wrestling business, when most people that know the wrestling business know that he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing. But that's the one talent he's got. And so he doesn't knock me publicly because he's dishonest and a prick. He stabs me in the back and cuts my nuts off behind my back, and somehow it never has a confrontation with me, because it's usually over the phone that I find out he's done these things, and then I never see him again. But I'm proud to knock Vince Russo publicly, because everything I say about him is true, and I'm in a lot of good company. I believe Bret Hart said that one time that Russo should be taken out in a parking lot and hung.
Whoa! So, with that being said, what do you think about the recent reports coming out that TNA is reportedly bringing Vince Russo back in for consultations and ideas?
I'm not at all surprised, but then again, who else the fuck's gonna work for him?
Listen, first things first, you got to take it with a grain of salt as a dirt sheet report. You know what I mean? But
you got to take it with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen. I don't have any knowledge that is factual. But at this point, it's almost a test. Can you really fuck TNA up any worse than it's already fucked up? And if so, he'd be the guy to do it, because he's the reason why they're in that. They never got TNA, besides an inexperienced owner, had everything that they needed. Jeff Jarrett wanted the company to succeed, and he's grown up in wrestling all his life. The only fault I've ever had with Jeff was that he's the one that hired Russo and came to bite him in the ass. But they have the television, they have the talent roster, they had the money behind them. Yes, Dixie doesn't know shit from apple butter about the wrestling business, but she should have stayed out of it and let the people who knew what they were doing run it. But the problem was Jeff hired Russo. Russo gave them the TNA stench from the start that they have retained. They lost their chance to make a first impression. And it's a shame, because nobody will ever be that close to challenging Vince McMahon again. It's not going to happen in this country. And it's been wasted because, Russo was in charge of creative pretty much from day one. And that led to them being seen as not a major league company, and they've never been able to compete. I truly believe with the assets that they had, the Spike TV and the money of Panda Energy behind them, if they'd had good creative from the start, and they've always had good talent, they could have certainly have done much better than what they've done. But the Russo stink has never gone away and will never go away. They spent the first, 8 or 9 years of their existence pretty much being sabotaged by, Vince Russo.
So you don't think TNA has a chance? You don't think TNA can turn the tide and really become a viable number 2 competitor?
How would they be doing that now?
Fire everybody who does creative things in the company.
They just had On a Pole and Velvet Sky in a cage in 1 week. I'm pretty sure Russo's back, guys.
I'm pretty sure Vince Russo's back.
Oh my God! No, at this point, what else are they going to do? Nobody wants to work there unless they've got no other options. They've signed every big major star in existence that doesn't work for Vince McMahon, and their ratings have gone down. And now they're cutting costs, and they don't even re-sign the few stars that they've been able to make themselves. I'm sorry. Dixie should have listened to people when they all told you, hey, Vince Russo's a fucking idiot. I'm sorry. I don't lean on that hot stove. I don't know how many times I can say that, and then you get burnt, and whose fault is it? Fuck.
But Brandon Gavin, finish us up with a final question here.
Yeah, Jim, earlier you mentioned that your segments had to be pulled in WWF because you were too honest. Do you think that wrestling needs to incorporate more of that type of honesty into storylines and the product, or is that just going to cause too many issues backstage and for the fans?
Well, no, the right kind of honesty, yes. It's just this stupid shit about we're gonna do a worked shoot that's come along and become in fashion recently, or shit that nobody gives a shit about or don't understand because it's too inside. Jerry Jarrett looked at it very philosophically. He had two top stars named Jerry Lawler and Bill Dundee. And while they respected each other and never had problems with each other, they also were completely opposite people and didn't really like each other either. And that tension, that edge, you could feel even when they were partners. The fans would go to the matches, and then afterwards, the wrestlers always would go to back in the days of weekly matches, the wrestlers on the way back to Nashville would go to the same exit off the interstate where they'd go to the store, they'd get something to eat or whatever, and the fans would follow them. And there'd be Bill Dundee at the liquor store, getting some beer and saying, yeah, Lawler's going to get in the car and listen to his music tape all the way home. And meanwhile, Lawler doesn't drink. He's over at McDonald's getting a Big Mac going, yeah, Dundee, fuck, I wonder if he sleeps in that Elvis Presley jumpsuit. So the people knew that there was tension. And Jerry Jarrett always said with anything he did in wrestling, he wanted to tell the truth that the people knew was the truth for as long as he possibly could, because then when you throw in the work, then people say, well, A was true, B was true, C was true, D must be true too. But when you're just preposterous from the start, nobody buys into it because it's preposterous from the start. Or when they do these ridiculous inside things and it almost as a rib on the talent, the average fan doesn't understand what's going on. Tell a simple story, tell it logically, and make it credible and somewhat believable, and then get two guys that can carry it off both on the microphone and in the ring, and that's how you draw money. And it doesn't matter what you put on a pole or who you put in a cage or whatever. If the people don't care about the guys in the match or the reason why they're fighting, especially if they don't even know why they're fighting, it doesn't work. And that's my belief.
Amazing interview. We got to get you back. This was an awesome interview. Tell everybody where they can find you. I know you got your Jim Cornette Experience podcast. You got a bunch of things to plug. Here's your chance.
You know what? Just go to jimcornette.com and you can find out everything I'm involved with. My Twitter is @thejimcornette. Jimcornette.com is where you can go. You can click on events and appearances and find out where you can see me live. You can click on the podcast and you can listen to the Jim Cornette Experience. Everything starts and ends, ladies and gentlemen, with jimcornette.com.
Awesome. Listen, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. Have a great day. Good luck in Europe and good luck on your plane trip too.
Thank you, guys. I hope I'll be around come March and we'll do part 2.
Awesome. Thank you much.
Thank you, guys.